The IRS. Washington Post reports that the IRS is closing 110 offices, and Trump's deputy chief of staff came out and said it's time to abolish the IRS. Now, that's not exactly something you're going to come out and say publicly unless the big man is signing off on that, because that's how you lose your job. Now, I'm going to do the best I can and not get myself too excited here, but are we going to really abolish the IRS? Joining me now, Carol Roth, hopefully not to pour cold water all over me, is joining me, author of the book, You Will Own Nothing. Everybody knows Carol Roth. Carol, are we gonna get rid of the IRS?
I mean, this certainly is a dream for pretty much everybody other than the tax me harder daddy crowd, which, there's a small percentage of the people that are in that. So this would be very exciting. And I do like the fact that people close to the Trump administration are playing around with that. But the question is, what does it mean? Because there are so many people who say abolish the IRS. And certainly, if we are adults, we understand there are things that still need to get paid for. We have to pay for our defense, and we have to pay for our court systems, and we have to pay for, other things. So there needs to be some level of administration of that. I have always contended that they should just send us a bill, right? Like everybody else. Here are the things that, you were charged for the defense, for, shrimps walking on treadmill studies, whatever it is, and they itemize it and they send us a bill so that we don't have to waste even more time while they are taking so much of our money, because that's a little bit of a kick in the teeth. And certainly with AI and folks like Musk in place, it seems to me that you could have the ability to answer a short form questionnaire, have AI sort through some information and be able to come up with some sort of a number in a couple of different places. I think that some of the people who are spouting this, Jesse, are assuming that if you abolish the IRS, all of a sudden that the government's not going to have to collect trillions of dollars in taxes in some way, shape, or form, which certainly is a pipe dream, or that they think like something like tariffs is going to pay for this. And the math doesn't math there either. But if we are moving in the right direction, I think that's good. It's also a really good time to do this because we do have a shortage of accountants in this country. And so, at a time where this is going to be something that's going to affect, in particular, the accounting industry, which I'm sure is lobbying the most heavily to not have the tax code simplified, kind of like the barber telling you that you need a haircut. The fact that we have fewer and fewer people who want to be accountants and that we don't have enough of them actually makes now the ideal time to try to address this.
Yeah, I can't believe we have a shortage of accountants. Gosh, there's nerds everywhere. I can't believe we don't have enough. Okay, let's talk about the tariff thing, because we found out yesterday that Trump is moving forward with a 25% tariff, not exactly a small one, on Canada, Mexico, jacking up 10% on China. Carol, strap us in. What are we in for here?
I've always said that this is a little bit art of the deal. It seems to me that this is something that Trump wants to put out to try to extract, either real or performative concessions. We can argue about which of those they are. And I do think that, if this were something that were to stay in place, it would be to the detriment of everybody who's involved. So I do hope that this is something that gets addressed quicker and sooner rather than later. And I do think he will claim victory on something or another. But at the same time, Trump is stubborn and his team is stubborn, and he's surrounded by a lot of people who really like the idea of tariffs. So it doesn't mean that we won't see some pain from that before that, it ultimately comes to a conclusion. Because the reality is, I think, particularly in the cases of our biggest trading partners, tariffs are a tactic rather than an end game, in my opinion. And one of the things that we've talked about before, tariffs also strengthen the dollar, against those currencies. And given where the dollar is right now and all the potential implications for that, that's something that if we get too much higher could touch off a debt spiral. So again, a tripwire that if you want to go in one direction, you have to be really careful that you don't touch that, because that could have all of these unintended consequences.
Carol, explain that. Tariffs and the value of the dollar. Expand on that for stupid people like me.
So basically, when I tell you that the dollar is strong, you might laugh at me and go, I went to the grocery store, the dollar's not strong, I can't buy anything. So it's not strong against a bag of groceries per se, but it is strong against baskets of other currencies in the world, which is great if you are trying to import things cheaply. It's bad if you're an exporter. But it's also bad because foreigners hold a lot of our assets. And things around the world are priced in dollars. And so if you have the dollar continue to get strong, what happens when these countries need to buy energy, food, other goods and services that are priced in dollars? Well, they somehow have to raise those dollars. And the easiest thing to do is something like sell one of our treasuries. Well, we know our treasuries trade inverse, those bonds trade inverse to treasury yields, which are also, on the upswing. They've come down in recent days, but, have been very high, kind of now over the last 15 years. So if you end up having all of these people who are sellers, that's going to put downward pressure on the price of treasuries and upward pressure on those yields. And if those yields get too high, well, again, that impacts how much we're paying for our debt and could just, there's certain numbers that trigger lots of things that happen in the markets. And we're getting close on both the dollar. And then if you get into a certain range on the 10-year yield, it's going to happen too. So all of these things are very interconnected. They're very opaque for a reason. But that's when I talk about these tripwires that have been laid by the Biden administration that really limit the things that the Trump administration can do. And then you see them talking about one of those things, they may not realize that they're heading into one of these tripwires. I'm sure someone in the administration must realize this. They've got some smart people, but in terms of the things that they project outwardly, is not the thing that you necessarily hear first. But you hear it here. You do hear it here. Hear it here first. Say that 10 times fast.
Opaque is such a great word. I'm going to figure out how to use that word, and I'm going to use it today.
You should.
Carol, what do we even get from Canada and Mexico? Because I don't eat avocados. I don't care about that.
Well, Canada is an interesting one. Certainly in the auto parts industry, there's a lot of those parts that I guess there's kind of this back and forth trade where components are set up to Canada and there's stuff that's added on and it comes back. The same thing as you mentioned, you might not like avocados. I don't either. By the way, we could totally do without that. But there's a whole bunch of other produce and goods that come from Mexico. And so they are good trading partners. The other thing that's going on with Mexico is that instead of manufacturing in China, you have all these companies who've now chosen to manufacture in Mexico, right? Where you have something that's closer to home, have something that, you can just drive across the border. And before this, we have a really good situation where we don't have these, crazy issues and tariffs. And now that's going to throw that whole plan, a little bit of a wrench into that plan. So you're seeing, whether it's medical devices or toys or textiles or other things, all of this manufacturing that has been increasing, right south of the border in Texas, in Tijuana and areas. And, this is a new endeavor to get things closer and manufacture things in North America to the extent we can't manufacture them in the U.S. for cost reasons. And now that's thrown a little bit of a wrench into that plan for sure.
Oh, gosh. All right, Carol, really quickly, small business. You've been ranting and raving about something recently. Explain to people what you're hot on right now.
Okay. We have 3 weeks left. And if nothing is done by Congress, if nothing is done by the Trump administration, if nothing is done by the Treasury or DOGE, that millions of small businesses unknowingly are going to be made into financial criminals and could face jail time and fines that are up to almost $600 a day and will continue to increase because of inflation. So this is something called the CTA BOI rule, the Corporate Transparency Act Beneficial Ownership Information Rule. And basically it's saying, hey, if you have an entity, even if you're a solopreneur that has an entity, an LLC, an S Corp, whatever it is, that you have to register with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Division of the Treasury because they're trying to stop cartels, money launderers, and terrorists who, of course, are not going to register. Big businesses are exempt. Financial services companies are exempt. I'll break the news right here. I haven't put it out yet, but I'm hearing that it could be the banks and the national security folks who are behind this that are trying to keep this from getting overturned. But it's in the court system, and it's been deemed unconstitutional, but only for the people who are in that particular lawsuit, which is ridiculous. So Congress, the House has already passed a 1-year delay bill. The Senate refuses to do anything. There are 2 bills, the Repealing Big Brother Overreach Act, that would repeal this entirely. And unfortunately, the House and the Senate have not voted on that. The Trump administration, who said they want to support deregulation in Main Street, could just go to Treasury and say, don't do this. So we have 3 weeks. Small businesses need saving. There are 35 million of them, by the way, plus housing association boards and some private companies caught up in this. This is the most obvious win. So don't let the banks win. Don't let these congressional weirdos win. We have to save small business. So call your Congress people immediately. Anyone who knows anyone in the Trump administration, we have to get rid of the CTA BOI rule immediately because there's only 3 weeks left.
Amen. My local taco shop goes out of business, I'm going to lose my mind. Carol, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.